Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? Like no matter what you did, it was never enough, never noticed, never celebrated? That was my life. I grew up in a house where my sister's achievements were trophies displayed in the living room, while mine were whispered about, dismissed or ignored entirely. And I never understood why until one day, my father, with that smug half-smile of his, said words that would cut me deeper than I could imagine. Your sister earned everything on her own, unlike you. I remember blinking at him, frozen, my stomach dropping like I had been pushed off a cliff. My sister sat beside him, smiling faintly, clearly expecting me to crumble, to argue, to beg for recognition. I did none of those things. Instead, I smiled, and that was the moment I realized I was done being invisible. I started small at first, quiet victories, subtle ones that no one could immediately attribute to me. I stayed late at my job, mastering skills that were technically beyond my role, building connections, networking, learning. Every extra step, every late night, every carefully executed project was like a piece of armor, strengthening me for the eventual confrontation I knew I would orchestrate. I did not do it for revenge yet. I did it for myself. I had to become untouchable, undeniable in ways my father could not ignore. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when the first real test came. I had been promoted to a leadership position I had been eyeing for months. I received the official letter at work, and my heart raced, not because of excitement, but because I knew exactly who I would tell first. I called my father, casually, as if nothing were out of the ordinary. Hey, Dad, I just wanted to let you know I got promoted to lead the team at the office. There was a pause on the line, and I swear I could hear him swallowing, his ego quietly bruised. Oh, that's good, he said, trying to sound casual, but the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. My sister, of course, called me moments later, curious, probing, but I had learned the art of measured responses. I told her the details calmly, confidently, without need for validation, without a hint of desperation. The weeks that followed became a delicate dance. My father tried to insert himself into my achievements, asking questions, offering unsolicited advice, attempting to take credit for my drive, as if he had a role in my success. Each time I responded with calm assertiveness, subtly reminding him that I was entirely responsible for my accomplishments. And I watched the cracks begin to appear. The subtle frustration, the faint envy, the realization that the daughter he had long dismissed was now standing taller than anyone in the room. Then came the next phase. I realized that if I wanted true satisfaction, I needed to go beyond career achievements. My life, my freedom, my happiness needed to be undeniable, public, and irresistible. I started investing in myself, in my health, my image, my passions. I enrolled in courses I had always wanted, traveled to cities I had dreamed of seeing, cultivated a life so rich, so full, that it became impossible for my family to ignore. Every Instagram post, every photo shared with friends, every milestone quietly celebrated was a deliberate statement. I am thriving without your approval, without your support, without your recognition. My sister naturally noticed first. She started messaging me, casual questions at first, but soon the tone shifted, curiosity mixing with resentment. So you went to Paris, alone? How did you afford that? She asked, feigning casualness, but I could feel the tension beneath her words. I replied simply, I saved and planned, just like you always taught me to. It was true, technically, but it was also carefully phrased to remind her subtly, without confrontation, that I was independent, capable, and fully in control of my life. The real turning point, though, came when my father tried his classic manipulation tactic. He invited me to dinner under the guise of a family chat, trying to assert control, trying to gauge where I stood in his eyes. I arrived calm, composed, smiling politely. The restaurant was quiet, intimate, the kind of place where subtle glances and gestures held weight. He started predictably, with condescending remarks about my sister's achievements, contrasting them with my supposed shortcomings. You see, she is disciplined, hardworking. You could learn a thing or two from her, he said, smiling in that smug way that used to crush me. But this time I did not flinch. I met his gaze evenly, smiled, and said, Dad, I have been learning from myself. And it has worked quite well, don't you think? The words were soft, almost gentle, but beneath them lay a steel edge he could not cut through. The table went silent, my sister's jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw the hesitation, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had assumed I would crumble, that I would beg for validation, that I would bow. But I did none of those things. I simply sat there, confident, composed, and entirely untouchable. From that night forward, the dynamic changed completely. My father's subtle manipulations lost their effect. My sister's passive-aggressive attempts at competition became transparent, and my life became entirely my own. I started making decisions without seeking approval, booking trips, making investments, pursuing hobbies that excited me, and every single act of independence was a quiet message. You do not control me anymore. The revenge, I realized, was not in confrontation. It was in living a life so undeniably full, so rich, so confident that my father's attempts to belittle me became irrelevant. The ultimate satisfaction came in the form of observation, watching him struggle to comprehend the woman I had become, the life I had built, and the boundaries I had set. Every attempt to belittle or manipulate me now met calm, firm resistance. Every comment designed to provoke jealousy was met with subtle grace. Every sneer, every dismissive glance, every underhanded remark was met with quiet dominance, a demonstration of my complete independence. Then I started turning my attention outward. I began helping friends, colleagues, and even strangers navigate their own family dynamics, sharing the lessons I had learned, how to establish boundaries, how to assert independence, how to let achievements speak louder than criticism. I became a mentor, a subtle guiding force, helping others reclaim the power their families tried to withhold. And with every story of success, every expression of gratitude, I felt the final remnants of the years of neglect dissolve completely. My father, predictably, tried one last-ditch effort to regain control. He sent emails, texts, even showing up at my office under the guise of casual visits. But I was ready. Every interaction was deliberate, controlled, and measured. I could hear the frustration building, the realization that I was no longer the child he could bend to his will. My sister tried to rally sympathy, trying to remind me of the past, but I had already rewritten the narrative. My life, my success, my independence were undeniable, and no amount of manipulation could reverse that. Eventually, they realized what I had always known. I did not need their validation, their approval, or their acknowledgement to thrive. My life, my happiness, and my achievements were fully my own, built on effort, perseverance, and a refusal to accept their limitations as truths. The quiet satisfaction that settled over me was stronger than any argument, stronger than any confrontation, stronger than any fleeting moment of recognition they might offer. I had achieved the ultimate revenge, not through chaos or drama, but through mastery, resilience, and undeniable success. I remember one evening years later, standing in my apartment, looking out over the city skyline, thinking about the journey. I thought about every condescending remark, every moment of invisibility, every attempt to belittle my existence, and I smiled, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I had transcended it all. I had become someone entirely untouchable, unshakable, and undeniably powerful in the quietest, most devastating way possible. That night, my father called again, cautiously, carefully. I answered calmly, casually. "How are you?" he asked, as if testing the waters. I smiled, letting the silence stretch before answering. "Better than ever, Dad. Better than ever." And I could hear it in his voice, a mixture of pride, surprise, and an uncomfortable recognition. He had underestimated me. He had dismissed me. And now I was unassailable. The final lesson I learned through all of this is simple, yet profound. The best revenge is not to hurt or humiliate. The best revenge is to build a life so full, so confident, and so undeniably yours that those who tried to diminish you can only watch in silence, powerless, and forever aware of the consequences of their own actions. My father, my sister, and even the family who once ignored me now understand, without me needing to say it, that the child they dismissed has grown into a woman they cannot control, cannot diminish, and cannot ignore. And the truth is, that realization is far sweeter than any words could ever be. The months that followed were nothing short of transformative. I poured every ounce of energy I had into perfecting the life I had started building, the career, the friendships, the experiences that I had always dreamed of but never thought possible, under the weight of their constant judgment. Every decision I made was intentional. Every success a silent proclamation. I am no longer the child you dismissed. I am fully my own person, unbound by your expectations or your criticism. It was during this time that I realized the true power of observation. I could see the subtle shifts in my father's demeanor when he heard about my accomplishments. There was a mixture of confusion and disbelief, like he could not reconcile the child he had scorned with the confident, accomplished woman standing before him in reality. He tried to assert influence in indirect ways, making suggestions, offering opinions as if they carried weight. But I had mastered the art of listening without reacting, of acknowledging without surrendering. Each attempt only reinforced my sense of control. My understanding that the power I had always sought from them was actually inside me all along. My sister, on the other hand, became a more complicated puzzle. Initially, she tried the same tactics my father had employed. Subtle digs, comparisons, even mild attempts at manipulation. But I had learned well. I responded with a combination of empathy and assertiveness, never stooping to petty arguments, never engaging in competition for its own sake. Instead, I let my life serve as the answer, as the undeniable proof of what it meant to thrive independently. Watching her frustration mount quietly became almost therapeutic. She could see my achievements, hear about my experiences, but could not diminish them, could not make them about her. Then came the financial step, the one that would solidify my independence in ways they could not ignore. I had been investing quietly for years, saving meticulously, learning how to grow my assets without relying on anyone's approval or inheritance. When I purchased my first property, a modest, beautifully renovated townhouse, I did it without fanfare. But when I invited my parents to see it, casually to share what I had built, I could see the surprise and subtle shock in their faces. My father's eyes flickered between pride and disbelief. My sister's jaw tightened in quiet envy, and I felt the satisfaction of watching the child they had dismissed step fully into the life she had earned. It was not only about material success, though. I invested in myself in ways that could not be bought. I joined classes, explored new hobbies, and even learned skills that would allow me to navigate life confidently without needing anyone's guidance. I became fluent in the art of self-reliance, not just financially but emotionally, psychologically, socially. And as I grew, as I expanded my capabilities, I realized something profound. The power my family held over me had never been real. It had only existed in my willingness to accept their narrative, to believe that their validation was necessary. Once I reclaimed that power for myself, I became untouchable in the truest sense. Of course they noticed. The phone calls, the messages, the subtle jabs. They all came with increasing frequency as they tried to assess, control, and manipulate. My father would comment on my appearance or lifestyle. My sister would send passive-aggressive texts, and occasionally, one of them would attempt to undermine me at work, subtly implying I had not earned my achievements. But I had learned the art of calm indifference, of responding with polite confidence rather than emotion. Every attempt at provocation became a chance to demonstrate my autonomy, my unwavering self-possession. There was one evening in particular that stands out vividly. My father invited me to what he called a family meeting, a gathering at his home that I could tell was meant to assert dominance. I walked in, confident, poised, and entirely unshaken. He tried his usual tactics, backhanded compliments, comparisons, subtle criticisms, but I met each comment with gentle, deliberate responses that allowed no space for argument or belittlement. I shared stories of my recent achievements, of experiences they could not possibly have influenced or controlled. I watched the subtle shift in their expressions, the realization that the person they had underestimated was not only successful, but entirely independent and entirely untouchable by their manipulations. That night, my sister tried one last subtle maneuver. She mentioned her own successes in a tone meant to provoke me, to reignite old feelings of inadequacy. I smiled calmly, acknowledging her words without giving them power. "That is wonderful," I said genuinely. "I am happy for you." The silence that followed was deafening. She expected jealousy, resentment, or defensiveness. Instead, she met only confidence and composure. The shift in the family dynamic was palpable, and I could feel the quiet astonishment building in both my father and sister. As I continued to cultivate my life, I began mentoring others in similar situations. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers sought my advice on how to navigate difficult family dynamics, how to assert independence, and how to achieve personal success without validation. Sharing my story became both cathartic and empowering. Every success story I helped create became a reflection of my own journey, reinforcing the strength and wisdom I had developed through years of struggle and observation. The pinnacle of my strategy came with a major career milestone. I had been working on a project for months, one that required meticulous planning, unwavering dedication, and strategic thinking. When the project succeeded beyond expectations, it made headlines within my industry. My father called, ostensibly to congratulate me, but I could hear the underlying astonishment in his voice. "I cannot believe how well you have done," he said, carefully measured, cautious. I responded simply, "Thank you, Dad. It took time, patience, and focus, something I learned on my own." The subtle edge in my voice communicated more than words could. He understood finally that I had become entirely self-reliant. The final transformation was internal. I no longer sought approval, validation, or recognition from anyone outside myself. I had developed a profound sense of self-worth, rooted not in comparison to my sister or parental approval, but in my own accomplishments and resilience. I had mastered the art of psychological independence, understanding that real power comes from self-possession, from knowing your value, and from refusing to be diminished by others' opinions. It was during a rare family gathering that the full weight of my journey became evident. My father and sister, for the first time, openly acknowledged my accomplishments. Not with backhanded compliments or subtle undermining, but with genuine admiration, albeit grudgingly. "You have truly built something remarkable," my father admitted, voice quiet, almost reverent. My sister nodded, a faint smile of reluctant acknowledgement. I returned their recognition with calm grace, understanding that their validation was no longer necessary, but accepting it as a reflection of my undeniable growth. The ultimate satisfaction came not from confrontation or revenge, but from observation, from witnessing the subtle shifts in dynamics and the realization that the control they once held over me was entirely gone. I had built a life so full, so vibrant, and so independent that their attempts at manipulation were impotent. My successes spoke louder than any argument, any criticism, any attempt at belittlement. The child they had ignored had grown into a woman who could not be ignored. Over time, my relationship with my family transformed. It was no longer about seeking approval or competing for attention. Instead, it became about setting boundaries, maintaining independence, and engaging on terms I controlled. They learned slowly that attempts at manipulation were futile, that my confidence was not negotiable, and that my achievements were entirely my own. My sister's passive-aggressive behaviors diminished. My father's attempts at control were subtle and measured, and our interactions became balanced, respectful, and distant in a way that preserved my autonomy. I began to understand the profound truth about family dynamics. You cannot change others. You can only change yourself. By reclaiming my power, asserting my independence, and cultivating a life of undeniable success, I had rewritten the narrative that had long defined my existence. The revenge I had sought, the quiet satisfaction I had desired, was complete, not through destruction, confrontation, or chaos, but through growth, self-mastery, and the creation of a life so vibrant and full that it was impossible to dismiss. Years later, I reflect on that journey with a mixture of pride and clarity. I remember the countless moments of doubt, the whispers of inadequacy, the silent tears in my room at night. I remember the relentless push to prove myself, not to them, but to myself. And I smile, knowing that I did not just survive their neglect and judgment. I thrived, I excelled, and I reclaimed every ounce of power that was ever denied to me. The final lesson, the one that resonates deepest, is this. True revenge is not about retaliation, confrontation, or humiliation. True revenge is about self-mastery, about reclaiming your autonomy, about building a life so full, so rich, so undeniably yours that those who sought to diminish you can only watch, powerless, and forever aware of the consequences of their underestimation. My father, my sister, and even the extended family who once ignored me learned that lesson. Quietly, inevitably, and irrevocably. I stand now, years removed from the little girl who felt invisible, and I see the full extent of what has been accomplished. I am unshakable, untouchable, and fully alive. My successes, my happiness, and my independence are entirely my own. The whispers of inadequacy that once haunted me have been replaced by confidence, by control, and by a profound understanding of my own worth. And in the quiet moments, when I reflect on the journey, I realize that the ultimate revenge is not in making others suffer. It is in thriving, in living fully, and in becoming entirely and unapologetically yourself. And the haunting final truth settles deep. The child they dismissed, the girl they underestimated, has become a woman they can never control, never diminish, and can only watch in awe, quietly aware that every word of doubt they ever uttered has only fueled the life she was always meant to live.